Merlyn Mystery. Say hello to Darth Vader. Sure.
Greetings.
Anyone here is
Thank you. All beings, earthlings, intergalactic beings that are watching. We're getting into the night. The hidden Sephirah, the dark side, and basically exploring into that and seeing what beauty can come out of that. So, okay, as you guys can see right now, alright, you can see this right here. Okay, this is Malkuth. Can y'all see?
Yeah. I can see.
Okay, this is Malkuth. This is representing the kingdom. This right here is Yesod. This right here is Tipereth. This right here is the hidden Siphora called Darth. And this right here is Kether. Okay? To get to that place where you want to be, where you call yourself a beautiful magi, a beautiful namastayer, a beautiful light worker, a Jedi, whatever name you want to call a princess, a king, whatever title you want to give yourself, that name, there's a ways to go up to there, and that's Kether. Which, Kether is actually a representation of your true soul. It is the true understanding of self. Okay? You have all these other Sephirahs here. Like you see, you got Yod, which I believe that's where you get Yoda, where they got Yoda from. Glory, Netzach, Geburah, which, you know, like we were saying, like we've said in the, you know, when we're doing the whole Kabbalistic cross. Does this make sense? This is what we were doing. Okay, because what we're doing is we're coming from Kether to Malkuth to Vegeburah to Vegedullah. That's what the Kabbalistic cross is. Kabbalistic. This is what this is. So you have these different ones: Bina, understanding, Chokmah. Now, from what they did in Star Wars is had Annakin, which Annakin Skywalker, what they did is took him through a journey up the Kabbalist, up the tree of life. But instead of going, you know, bouncing from here to here, you just go the straight and narrow path, straight up. You can bounce from here to there, but I've heard, and I believe many Kabbalah say that, you know, it's best to just go straight up what they call the middle pillar. And we actually did that on a previous Merlyn's Mystery School where we talked about the middle pillar. Okay. Alright, so you guys, does that make sense?
That doesn't make a lot of sense, you know, Darth Michael, in fact, that. But then that's the thing. The thing is what is going up the straight up then towards like Catherine means, like when you're going on this journey of the tree of life? Is it like you're
Right.
trying to go to the dark side to make it conscious, or is it something else?
Yeah. Yeah. That's basically what it is. It's the shadow self. It's where true knowledge begins to take place. You know, the whole thing, Beauty and the Beast. Finding beauty in that which, you know, if anyone, you know, we're all human. I'm pretty sure all of us have made mistakes before. That mistake, when people make mistakes, is a part of that, is a part of that darkness, but it's not until you learn from that mistake that you begin to shed light on it and say, hey, I shouldn't have kicked that guy, or whatever the case is, you know. That's what we're talking about. Now, it usually comes from, and this is also from Carl Jung, the shadow self. Okay, so everyone has it when they're young, certain things, certain events, certain things that took place that shaped and molded them to who they were. So if they were, say, the guy that always got the girl, or the you know, the princess kind of archetype, or the prom queen, or whatever it was, based on your achievements or disappointments, makes what they call builds into a person's personality based on. Now, I'm not just talking about school, but I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure a good portion of us here have been into a public school at one point in time. So basically, those events, those achievements or disappointments, or whether someone loved you enough or whether they didn't, shapes what you call personality. And if you didn't get what you wanted when you were little, or whatever, that later shows up when it begins to grow. You know, and when they grow, as they grow, those begin to kind of manifest themselves in different areas. So if so one of your parents or something said, you know, for example, you know, don't listen to this music, or you can't have this toy, or Barbie, or whatever. By them telling you that you cannot have this, you begin later, when there's a point whether you live alone, or, you know, they're not there, or whatever, and you begin to accumulate a whole bunch of whatever it was you were told that you couldn't have. This becomes the wounded healer. Okay, so that's basically the wounded healer. For instance, if and this could probably go for some of us, you know, if you had a book bashed into your head, or whatever, or fundamentalist, the way you were raised, or whatever, you had a book constantly thrown at you, that impacts the psyche. And so you either you begin to have this resentment towards that book or whatever, or it can vary in ways, but basically it's the same concept, the wounded healer. All right. So back to the tree of life. Okay, everyone can see that?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so Malkuth represents the kingdom. Yesod. Oh, that's not it. Okay, Malkuth is represented as the kingdom. Yesod, the foundation. Tipereth, beauty. Doth, knowledge. What we're talking about today is Doth, is knowledge. Meaning, if you take this path, you will obtain true knowledge or hidden knowledge about yourself. But, you know, as in Star Wars, they took Annakin, and Annakin began to, you know, start at Malkuth, you know, basically where he was at, the planet that he was on. But, you know, he was with his mother, which was representing Yesod. You know, basically from what I saw and heard, representing Yesod. Now, Yesod more so has to deal with the emotions. So, kind of, as a person is growing, you know, they go through a stage where everything is very emotional. They're learning to work with their emotions.
I can input a little,
Sephirah.
Michael, I can
Go
input
ahead.
a little bit right here. As far as Yesod goes, its foundation, the way that it is foundation is it's representative of the astral plane.
Okay, yeah, and also when people are young, they begin. They start first off, basically, mastering what they call the astral body. Basically, mastering what they call the astral body. And the astral body. Give me a second here. This is a weird looking bug. All right. Anyways,
What you said that. So in the Kabbalistic tradition, or that map you showed me, is like first children have to first go through what we call the, what do you call it? I can't read that thing. It's Malkuth.
there's different
Is that-
stages. You start at Malkuth,
But like, what
which is
is
the kingdom?
But what is Malkuth? Like in like how do you call it? In the scientific terms that the audience can be able to understand, because Malkuth can also mean like the form or something.
Malkuth is basically the materialistic plane. When people are absolutely have attachments, obsessed, like I said, with material objects in order to fulfill something for themselves, or they think it will make them happy, or whatever. Malkuth is representative of the materialistic world. In that sense, it would be, I guess, in the Satan category, because it is materialism. People that are obsessed with materialism are mainly stuck in Malkuth.
Well, there's like a shadow to the tree of life also that called the Five Path, which we'll get into later, I'm sure. But the kingdom of Malkuth, whenever, according to the story and the fall of Adam and all that, Malkuth actually became, instead of part of the kingdom of just creation, it also became the kingdom of destruction. So,
Right.
so it was. But at the same time, if you think about it, that has to be, because how can something? Because whenever something destroys, like let's say decomposes, all that
Something else is
energy,
born.
yeah, that nitrogen, it goes into the ground and it gives vital nutrients for something else to grow. But yeah, the kingdom of Malkuth, or the sphere of the material physical world, is shared by both of both of those, the quote unquote dark and light.
Right. So Yesod, like we said, okay, so let's say if we were Anakin, for example, this is what happened in the movie. Malkuth, he moved from Malkuth. He was on the path to be the Jedi, or Jedi, but in the Egyptian context, there's what they call the Djed, which represented the spine of Osiris. This is basically representative of the spine of Osiris, the middle pillar. From Malkuth, they took Anakin to another place. I believe it was Tatooine. It's this desert place, I believe. He was going to train. You start out as a Padawan, and you go up the tree. Okay, basically but he left his mother, which correspond to Yesod, but he was worrying about his mother. In the movie, his mother. Now this is symbolic, of course, but his mother was basically, I mean, she died because of I forgot what the name was. It's these little beings with a hood on.
Jawa.
No, I forgot what they're called. Something hunters.
The only ones I knew of was the Jawa.
It might have been. It's those little things that they run with the hoods on.
Yeah. Got little glowing eyes.
Tusken Raiders, I think.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? Tusken Raiders. Yeah.
So those were the ones that had the head wraps.
Yeah. Yeah, they make those little noises and everything. But anyways, that's when he began to show off his anger. But he wanted to be a Jedi. Now, a Jedi is basically Tipereth. Becoming the Jedi. Tipereth, I could say Tipereth is an awesome stage to be, but Tipereth is really the beginning of consciousness. In a sense, this is probably right when you start learning about metaphysics, you get into chakras, and you get into you start hearing, say, words you've never heard before, like chakras and pineal gland and kundalini and Kabbalah and tarot, and you just start hearing all these words you've never heard before, and it's like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Namaste. But what the thing is your personality from when you came into this world, pretty much Malkuth, you didn't start out saying any of that. You didn't start out saying chakras. You didn't start out saying, they existed, but you didn't know about them. I mean, you may have known about them subconsciously, because it's within every being, but these things didn't come. Okay, so Jedi is really the beginning. Man, they say namaste, you bow, and you say namaste. They bow, you bow. This is where you get the choice. Do you want to take, there's two different paths, they call it. Do you want to take the left-hand path or you want to take the right-hand path. Okay? Now you can still get to Kether. You can somewhat, I've never seen it done before, I guess. You can stay in Keprith and be, or my bad, Teprith and be cool, or if you take what they call the left-hand path, you can go through the Doth, which is knowledge about your true self. Tipereth is almost an illusion that you are at that final stage, in a sense. If you saw in Star Wars, Annakin, when he began to want to become the Jedi, and he went to sit under the Council, they told Annakin that he was not ready to become a Jedi Master. Because either he'd worry about his mother, or later, they said because it was they did not trust him. And at that point, really, the Jedi were, in a sense, becoming a little bit corrupt. So, and in the movie, he becomes friends with the Chancellor, Palpatine, because his lover, Padme, "Oh Mani Padme home," you know, he wants to say Padme, and the Emperor tells him, well, a Jedi knows the light side of the Force. A Sith, a Jedi pretty much want the same thing in two different ways. But the thing with what the Emperor tells him is that in order to be a student of the Force, one must open their mind to understand both ways, not just the light side, in a sense. So basically, if you watch the movie, excellent movie. Anakin begins to go to the dark side. In other words, he sees the Jedi as becoming corrupt. He wants to save his lover. He does some messed up things, but he wanted to save his lover. And actually, you know, I don't want to ruin the movie, but he doesn't necessarily save his lover. But he puts on what you call the Darth Vader mask. He becomes, basically after he says, you know, he joins Emperor, he wants to become a Sith, the Emperor says, "You shall be known as Darth Vader." What do we say? The Darth. The Darth. So he's going to the dark side of himself to learn the true, but he's still on the path to be a Jedi, because I mean he can only go up from there. And you see it also in the last movie where he takes off the thing and basically defends his son, you know, and then when he dies you see all the Jedi there together. So in a sense, it's still the same concept. And also you see the two other Sephirahs when Luke, let's see, when Padme has twins, Luke and Leia, representing Bina and Chokmah. Okay, Bina, Chokmah. Can you guys see that over there? Hello.
Did Michael just drop?
I think he just gave up and left.
I don't think he gave up. I think that his computer just kicks him off sometimes.
But, like, he was like, does anyone see that? And no one answered. So,
That's just because
he showed up late today, so, you know.
I don't know. I mean, I
He
don't
might be
think it's on
back.
purpose.
Welcome back, Andy.
All right. So yeah, going back to what Michael was talking about regarding like some of the things about Kabbalah. Like to continue on what he was talking about, like here's I don't know if you guys get this, but here's how it works: is that at first, like it has almost like something to do with the human development. Is that when you first came to this world, you learned what do you call Malkuth. That means you are learning
there
to
we go.
define something. Welcome back, Michael. And
Yes.
Yesod is like you are trying to, okay, I have to define my identity. I want to seek approval, just like a teenager
Yes.
would go for. And then the next level
Here's
would
actually
be,
the drawing that I have here. I mean, I even drew Darth Vader basically, but that's
oh wow,
you see that right here, Malkuth, Yesod, Tipereth, the Darth, Kether. The goal is to get to Kether as understanding of your true self. But you're going to be bullshitted with your true self if you stay in Tipereth. And I can only say from my own experience, but I can tell you, I definitely, not to the degree of Annakin, I'd say, but I could definitely see, you know, the groups and certain things that I got into. It's just like these people were just getting into spirituality, and everything basically became like a new saying, a new phrase. You know, there's nothing. The word namaste, for what it means and everything, is beautiful, and I'm not knocking that. And I still say it sometimes because it's a beautiful meaning. But I'm just saying it and then expecting the other person to say it. In other words, you couldn't say anything like, you know, just peace or goodbye or just whatever you would normally say before you got introduced to all these fancy words. That is what we're basically getting down to, because some people, when they get into metaphysics and they get into this information, they have the idea that they're supposed to change. And it's really not about changing. I mean, it's really about understanding who you are and why you are the way that you are. Why do you fear trains? Why did you piss the bed? Why did you, you know, why did that girl leave you or that guy leave you? You know, it's really...
It's more about exploring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so this expansion of consciousness allows you to tap into the subconscious, superconscious, and most of, you know, I mean, psychologists say it to this day. The reason why most people do the things that they do is because the subconscious. A person gets hungry and starts digging their hands in some chocolate almonds, you know.
That's because the brain needs nutrients, and most of the food today doesn't supply the nutrients we need. And just because being full isn't necessarily meaning that you're getting the nutrients that you need. You just feel full because your stomach's overstuffed. But you don't have to eat to the point where you're full. You just need to eat to the point where you're satisfied. When you get the nutrients you need, and your brain will tell you.
Right, where you're satisfied. So
right, and here's where I stand regarding the Kabbalah. When you showed us about Darth, it's almost like as though when you let me how you word it in spirituality. You mentioned enter any form of spirituality, they will always talk about the light, which is the first stage of whatever enlightenment, because they just feel peaceful.
Yeah.
However, what ends up happening is they ignore the darker side of themselves.
Right.
They are not making it conscious.
And that's the problem, because I'm
and
saying
that was a hindrance down to Cather, which means
right.
Well,
See
actually,
this right here?
George Lucas was more precise with understanding what light was when he said the Force, having both the dark side and the light side. In the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, what they use is the word lux, which is Latin for light, LVX. And I could get into that, yeah. And what that is L is the sign of Isis, B is the sign of Apophis, the destroyer, and X is the sign of Osiris, the redeemer. So lux in its capacity is actually light, destruction, and resurrection. There's also a saying, igna natura renovator integra, and what that is nature by fire is renewed in its integrity. So through the process of transformation, you become more authentic.
Mm-hmm. You are transforming. I mean, you are. This process, you know, and some people say it's an ongoing process, which I mean makes sense. But like, you know, when you've hit these different stages. See, Malkuth, right? Yesod. This is the point where the Jedi says, "Okay, I believe I've had enough. I'm tired of this sugar coating." And, you know, it's kind of like in that movie, 36 Chambers of Shaolin. You know, I've been here for about 2 or 3 years, and I've been sweeping floors, and you didn't teach me Kung Fu yet. I've just been sweeping floors. You know?
But it's like when we was talking about the other day about Star Wars, whenever Luke Skywalker finally defeats Darth Vader, his father, Annakin, he doesn't do it using the light side of the Force. He is pissed because he said, "Oh, your sister," you know, and Luke says, "Never," and just starts thrashing him, and just using all of his anger and emotions, and and then the Emperor's clapping, good, 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 and Luke's like, "No, you don't understand. I was just using the dark side. I'm a balanced being, and I'll never be like my father." Or I'll never go to the dark side. I'll never go to the dark side. I'm a Jedi.
He said that,
like
right?
My father. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you see the whole thing? But he was using it.
Yes, he was using the dark side.
But he was using both.
Yeah, he was using both. He was using both the light side and the dark side. So in that essence, that's if you noticed, he was wearing black, and the Emperor didn't tell him to wear black. Okay, he done that for his own benefit because black is basically a neutral color. It's a balanced color and it doesn't influence either direction. It's been known and been traditionalized to be a dark aspect, but it really isn't. Black is a neutral color. That's why a lot of witches wear black, because it's neutral. It's a symbol of Akasha. But yeah, whenever Luke Skywalker defeated Vader, he was using both the light and the dark, the love of his sister and the hatred of the Emperor and the dark side, to just rip in to Annakin and just bashes him until he finally falls down, and then he cuts his arm off. And that's when the Emperor starts clapping, and he said, "Now kill him and take your side, take your father's side, or take your father's place at my side." You know, and he threw his lightsaber down. He said, "Never," because
he was getting old anyway.
Yeah, he was balanced. Well, yeah, he wanted him to take over as the Emperor and, you know, continue the dark side of the Force and continue to manufacture Sith Lords. But yeah, what he really did was he was balanced, and he knew the light side and the dark side, and knew how to use both of their forces
together.
Yeah, and that is pretty much Diat, where once you realize the shadow side of yourself, you can use those energies to manifest what it is you're wanting, whether it be good or bad, quote unquote.
It's like the angels and the Goetia.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I said once when we first started, as far as you want to start with the foundation of light. That way you can build self-trust.
Right. Because if you're not experienced, you may need some help. You know.
Right. Exactly.
Depending on your work.
Yeah, and then you can get that help, and you you trust yourself that you're worthy of that help because you are a light worker.
Right.
But when you get right down to it, there is no
not an electrician,
thing.
But
yeah, there is no such thing as white, gray, and black magic. It's all magic.
It's all magic. All to impact the psyche, subconscious mind, and yep.
But yeah, the thing with love is that's where it's unconditional love. That's also what it speaks of in the Bible as far as Genesis. What we was talking about before is they have the knowledge of good and evil. And when they ate the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they realized and became almost as understanding as God, quote unquote, was. But they didn't know how to create using their own consciousness. So if they would have eaten of the tree of life, they would have become eternal, because they fully understood the whole essence of being, both the good and the evil, and the creative aspect of consciousness.
Oh wow! See that makes sense. You know, that's interesting because I look at when Heather first showed up, and we were like,
I was it kind of took me off guard, but at the same time, you know, I was willing to unconditionally love.
Mm-hmm. I think, well, it took me just a little while because I was, the name.
Well, yeah, we had been talking about Lilith, but, you know, she's just on her journey. Even Lilith.
Right.
Not Heather, but the actual archetype Lilith. And at one time, she was a benevolent goddess. So, you know, just on her journey, you know, what she does is what she does. So.
Right. I still don't mess with her to this day, though.
Well, here's something that I just don't get about is that when I type in my question, I said that
I'm not afraid, but
But here's the thing: if you want to get to Kether, which is the highest form of consciousness, people always ask me if that.
I think you dropped again.
How in the world so many light workers are fearing the darkness? They're not willing to make it conscious.
They're afraid.
That's that's what I'm saying. That's where you get stuck in Tipereth. See, the interesting thing. This doesn't have to do with me drinking urine, but I just want to say the interesting thing is it looks like it. Okay, I can't say if it look to people that don't know what this is. This is dark. I mean, it's not dark magic, but I'm saying it's something people are not used to. You know, so me drinking it on a video or whatever, but it's not dark to me because I've explored. You know, I've done this before. You know, so not you don't have to say as far as urine, but I'm saying things like that make you kind of say like, what makes people so afraid of this? You know.
Well, that's just like I have. Teal Scott is really breaking the mold on spirituality with what she calls spirituality 2.0, where it's examining those shadow aspects of yourself and recognizes them as a part of you, and whether or not, you know, at least accepting that that is part of you, and if you want to express it, you can, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. But repressing it, it will manifest.
Right.
Because resistance, when you resist, it will persist, is her saying. And I really like that. But yeah, it really has to do with facing yourself. It's almost like, what was it in the Never-Ending Story, I think it was, where Atreyu faced himself in the mirror.
It's a good movie.
You know?
Yeah.
And he faced himself and he saw what he was, you know, so, and whenever it would be awesome if people could just have this like magic mirror or possibly a ritual or a meditation where they close their eyes and look in this magic mirror and see everything they've ever been. Because that's kind of like what Dayat is as far as a reflection to Keter. Where Keter is, whenever you're doing the middle pillar, it is consciousness and you're becoming aware of the oneness, but Dayat reflects that oneness and shows you everything that is.
It's like the last, in a way, it's kind of like the last storm before the eye of the storm.
Exactly. Yeah, actually that's what Teal says too. She says to face the eye of the storm, but I believe it's you face the fury.
Whoa! Wow.
You face the fury of the storm to reach the eye. You see, because
she said that?
Yeah, well, she said the eye of the storm. I tried to correct her in one of her videos and say, no, it's actually the fury. She's just a person on her journey, you know. She puts her pants on the same way I do, so, you know, I was just letting her know, you know, that you're facing the fury of the storm, not the eye of the storm. You don't stand and face the eye of the storm. You stand and face the fury of the storm, and then when you walk through that storm, you come to the eye.
Right.
And that's where
symbolic. Don't try to walk through a
tornado. Right, Tony.
Symbolic.
Right.
Yeah, that's symbolic.
Guys, like here's
don't try to walk through a tornado or a hurricane. Well, I'm sorry, Andy. Go ahead.
All right. So when you talk about when you said going through the darkness, like here's something that I noticed. This is something that has been bothering me for a couple of days ago or weeks. About like for.
Come on, Andy.
You're cutting out, honey.
But anyways,
see, that's something else that people see as the dark side of things. It's sexuality, and there is nothing wrong with expressing yourself however you want to express yourself. That's what I posted on Facebook as far as the rainbow goes. I don't think of yourself as only that. But you know, if that's how you want to express yourself, then do it.
Those things it becomes the dark. When you like
solidify
it and time out, and it becomes the dark side.
Right, but if you recognize it and express it within yourself with your own choice, then there's nothing wrong with it. You know, it's just how you feel like expressing yourself and expressing creation. So. there's really not a thing wrong with it unless you get caught up in it. If you get caught up in it and say, this is who I am, then, you know, if
Right.
that's not
Need to make it
necessarily
your
a
religion.
good thing. Yeah, you don't want to solidify it like that. Now, I'm not saying I'm having anything against different people who go through massive transformations as far as surgeries and stuff like that to be themselves, as long as, you know, they're doing it by choice and
So,
not
yeah,
by tradition or not by believing
So yeah,
that's
going
the
back.
they can be.
Right.
Okay, go ahead, Andy.
Go ahead, Andy.
Yes, Tony, going back to what I've seen a lot of disciples of Teal Swan most of the time, like when it comes to welcoming the darkness of a member that is coming into their group, it's almost like as though they are pushing that person away. Is that something like how does one be able to show this to the disciples in such a way that they become more welcoming instead of just simply, oh, we're going to just like brush it off and just leave it under the rugs, because that's not how you reach the state called Kether, you know? It's not going to work that way.
Oh yeah, that's what I was just talking about. When I don't know if you heard because you dropped out. I guess you heard it on your phone.
Yeah.
Hopefully. But yeah.
Yeah, I did.
As far as the darkness is concerned, you have to face it, but it's not you. You see, it's like what I was talking about with Luke Skywalker. Whenever he bashed Darth Vader, like totally just showed him up. You know, he just slammed him into the ground with as much hatred as he possibly could muster. Okay, and when he'd done that, he felt the force of the dark side, but he had felt it before. He knew it because, you know, he had had to deal with that. But the love of his sister was there also, so it balanced out that dark side. And then when the Emperor, you know, the solidifier said, all right, now take your father's place at my side, he said, no, I am a balanced Jedi, like my father before me, because his father...
He said I am a balanced Jedi?
No, he just said he's a Jedi, but that's basically what it was.
In other words,
That's what a Jedi is balance.
That was a pretty cool suit that he had.
Oh, I loved it. It reminded me of a priest without a little white thing on top.
Yeah.
That's true.
So did that
Also,
answer your
Obi-Wan
question,
said
Andy?
that if you strike me, I'll become a more powerful Jedi
Yeah,
than
that
you
does.
could ever imagine. That's what Obi-Wan said.
But yeah, if you don't look at your darkness, if you don't look at your shadows, you're missing out on a major part of yourself. And it's not like you necessarily have to overcome your shadows. You just have to recognize them as being there. And you know,
Right,
it is
just
up to
exist.
you. It's up to you to choose whether or not to express Kabbalah or mercy, Gdula. You know, that's that balance right there. That's what the Kabbalistic cross is it's a balancing point of your existence. And whenever, like, severity is exactly what it means. It's severity. You have no mercy. You do exactly what you have to do in the given situation for the result you want. But when you balance that with mercy, then you come to become a beautiful being that is wise and understanding how to work in both aspects of those natures of the spheres. And of course, those are reflected up in understanding and wisdom as well.
Basically, when
Right.
you
So
go through this
yeah,
doc,
let's.
it's much easier to stop faking the funk.
Well, that's what I was about to talk about, because
you're,
here's the
you're
thing.
getting to the true side of yourself.
Just one
Right,
more
but-
thing. Just one more thing, Andy, and then I'll let you have this talking stick. But what I was going to say, what I was going to say is, people are looking for this ability. You know, it's like, oh, I just want to be up with one with Source so I can have unconditional love. You cannot have unconditional love until you stare at the dark side of yourself. Hey, Michael.
Hey, Michael.
So yeah, until you're able to understand and relate
Yeah,
to
we
the
were
fact
talking
that
about.
everybody has a dark side, including you, and unconditionally through
Tony had a dark
doors.
side.
I have a dark side. I don't had. I have. I'll take
Oh,
you.
he has a dark side.
But
Used to
yeah,
have
I
nails,
have.
man.
Yeah, I used to have nails and I would cut with them because I sharpened them I painted them black and sharpened them as sharp as like razors. I accidentally cut my thigh one time because my hand scraped across it. But anyway, but yeah, you've got to be able to see that the dark side, the shadow nature of people, is part of who they are. You know, and if you can't love that unconditionally, then you need to take a better look at yourself.
The man in the mirror.
Exactly. Yep.
And can I say something?
Oh,
Go
absolutely.
ahead, Michael.
So I think, you know, when people are talking about their own dark side or their shadow self, I think they think of it in terms of duality, which is kind of the issue of being in a dual world. I think we literally are the shadows of who we actually are. If we especially take the allegory of the cave to heart, we are the shadows, and the world that we live in is the shadows of the higher dimensions being cast upon us. So it's not even figuratively. It's not even figurative. It's in a very universal sense. This is the shadow world.
Well, that does kind
I
of
think it
make
makes
sense.
sense.
Because in the Necronomicon, it does say, "Stoop not down into the darkly splendid world where a chaos and an abyss wrapped in clouds awaits you." You know, so it does actually make sense what you're saying there, because it is, and that goes along with the Hermetic principles of as above, so below. The principles of correspondence. Planes on the higher affect the planes on the lower. So in that essence, yes, we are a shadow world.
Actually,
Right. And
I wanted to say,
and here,
like, basically, if people wanted to know where the Doth is, corresponding to the chakras, and this is just what I've heard, something with the old Jewish men, but actually, right here.
Yeah, it's the throat.
Well, not just the throat. I mean, where the beard is. This is the hidden Sephirah. I'm not just trying to be funny. Like, this is what I've heard. The old Jewish men, that they have this beard, and it represents Doth. Because look, you can't see under here.
That is true. That is a good way to look at it. But as far as that is concerned, as why it's the throat chakra, is because it's the ability to destroy or create with your words. You can really lash somebody down into a puddle if you know what you're doing with your voice. Words are energy. Energy creates. Energy, you know, you can also use it to destroy. Hence, like the atomic bomb.
I mean, you know, like Cartman did to the nanny.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
that's a good one. Yeah.
That's
He
just
just,
an
yeah.
example.
or here's the thing, guys. If you did you guys have a chance to look over the movie called Reign of Fire that was coming out at 2002? Well, that's also the same thing. It tells the story of this one character. His name is Gwen, and at first he was having this so-called PTSD that when you first when he first faced the dragon that killed his mother, he's all fearful, and he when he leads his people, it's a reflection of how of his state of mind. It's about survival. It's it's about protection. Then by the time, like for example, and by the time somebody came over to try to till like that same fear came back to haunt him.
But yeah, basically he was living in a corner, and he was well. I understand he was trying to take care of humanity, and he was trying to preserve what humans were left on the planet. But whenever the tank guy, the gung ho American guy showed up with his tanks, and they had a way to actually fight the dragons, and they took an initiative, and they started doing more of a Yang style type of energy manifestation instead of the Yin, which was just like hiding and trying to just be passive. They really, you know, he kind of balanced that out. He still wanted to protect protect what was left of humanity, but at the same time, he went on the offensive to find out, you know, or to try to get rid of the problem to begin with. And that's what they did.
And once he did, yeah, and that's how like in psychotherapy or even in like leadership practices, one should be able to judge a leader based upon the fact that how does he face his darkness, not by how he generates the light. You know, the problem is that we have so many leaders like that already. We don't need that anymore.
That's true. Yeah, we need some initiative leaders who understand and fully understand the whole idea of peace, but recognize that, you know, at some times you have to fight for that peace. But I was just reading what Michael said over here in the side about whether a written word is still considered the throat chakra. It is because it's words. You know, most people when they read, they hear those words in their mind. So you're still hearing it.
Right.
It's still energy being transferred. So it might not be as intense as somebody actually speaking it to you like verbally. That's why oratory tradition to me is like awesome, because I've always liked the idea of the Native American dream keepers and the storytellers. I think that's an art form that should never die, because it really is something to hear the story being told instead of reading it. But at the same time, you can also read a story and the words disappear at a certain point and you start creating your own world. But that happens also with a good storyteller, because you can close your eyes and you can visualize or just see what's going on, and see like the coyote and spider doing all of these antics that they use to teach their children about mischief, and how it's not necessarily a bad thing, but bad things can come of it. As far as the Native American tradition, there is
and exactly here's what like
the only evil resides in man, or an evil shaman.
And like here's something that here's the thing that was noticed in a society like here in the United States, especially like when it comes to manifestation. What I found is that a lot of people have what we call they have like mental disorders like ADHD, autism, or any form of mental disorder. It has nothing to do with the fact that they are broken. It just means that it's just like shadow side people try to manifest itself in a society where people are so called in the norm. What ends up happening is when you try to drug a person by just suppressing that so-called hyperactivity, just by suppressing that, you ended up causing that's how like our society today became nothing more than like a bunch of broken people, mischievous, you name all the problems at school, we have all of it from A to Z. What ended up happening is that the moment that when, like for example, this is what I tried when I was working with kids, is that when you learn to like make conscious of these attention disorders that you might as well call it, or autism, or any form that goes against the norm, that's when you found out that it's a gift. But what I just like, but what the question is how can we turn it into a gift? Like schizophrenia, for example, a lot of people nowadays becoming more commonly living with that disorder. But how do you make it conscious in such a way that you can use it as a benefit rather than like you hearing too many voices all at once and you ended up killing yourself, for example?
Oh, I don't really listen to voices. If I do hear voices, what I'll do is, just like I told Asia whenever she was talking about hearing voices, write it down. You have at least acknowledged that it was said, and then you can wait and see if the universe is trying to tell you something, then it'll be validated by you hearing it again or reading it somewhere, and then whenever you integrate it into your understanding, then you can recognize it as being valid. But I wouldn't listen to just anything voices says because Dayat is very chaotic, as far as all the possible creations and manifestations of consciousness exist in Dayat. Not only the quote-unquote good, but the bad, the misunderstood, the misleading, all of that. Even Hermes. There's a story of Hermes sitting at the crossroads and confusing the travelers because he was testing them to see if they would trust their intuition or if they would just go blindly by what somebody said. Some old man, some guy in a hood with a beer suit. Oh yeah, it's that way, and he just laughed because he knew he said it in the wrong direction. But that was just the mischievousness of Hermes. But in all essence, what he was doing, he was teaching them by example. Whenever they got there, they realized they went the wrong way, and they had to come all the way back and go the right direction. But it didn't hurt them in any way. It just kind of sidetracked them and made them think that they ought to question whenever somebody tells them something.
Yeah, what's funny? I did that one time. I did that to some friends. They were pretty overweight, and they could have went the short way, but I took them the long way.
Right. Yeah, that's
but it was basically just to teach them a lesson.
You had to give them exercise.
Yeah, give them exercise too. But
here's where it's really funny. Like when you guys talking about Da'as, about chaos, I also found the same principle. Also, you can use the same Kabbalistic principle on the psychotherapy. Is that a lot of times when we deal with our kids or we deal with people with mental disorders, half the time society for example, I have ADHD. Many times, what end up happening is that they drug me. Are you
sure?
What do you mean? Are you sure?
Did you just listen to what Hermes said and go that direction, or did you find out for yourself?
I find out for myself. Is that here's the problem?
What is ADHD?
It's still something somebody told you.
Well, somebody's told me that ADHD is like a chemical imbalance. That is something that you constantly hear in the mental health professionals. Well, however, I decided to take the other way around, where they did not show me the route because first off, it's already covered in bushes, and so I had to cut down that tree in order to figure out that's the route down there. And when I did take the route where I say ADHD is nothing to be ashamed about. It has to be more of a gift. And if it is a medical condition, that just means that I'm more sensitive than everyone else. That means I'm above average. It does not mean I'm below the average of somebody else.
Right.
Okay.
Usually, so
what
going back to what Tony...
I was just going to ask real quick, what does ADHD stand for?
Attention delved into a higher dimension.
Yes, there you go.
Attention delving into a higher dimension. I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, it's just how you define it.
Yeah, and people, there are some people who say that it is attention dialing into higher dimensions, but some people call it a deficit disorder. Now, here's the funny thing, is that...
Wait, well, which one do you like better?
I would never choose the dial one because seriously, going back to what
Why don't
Tony
you stick
said.
with that one?
Oh yeah, but usually I grew up in the helping professional, so that's what I go by most of the time. But anyway, going back to what Tony was talking about, when he posts this one post, I remember you posted somewhere, and I commented on it. It said that the strongest humans are the ones who are the most sensitive. What I found out is that ADHD, autism, any of those so-called mental disorders, even those who have, like, I have no idea, these people are ridiculously powerful if you were to consider their sensitivity. Like, by nature. Because the more you're in tune with nature, the more you're stronger. Which is why that's what explains what happens when you give the person with ADHD the right condition to grow. Instead of just simply feeding him with crappy all sorts of stuff and expect him to grow, if you give him the right stuff, he ended up becoming a Superman. That's why when it comes to ADHD, I would call it attention dialing to higher dimensions.
Yeah.
So in essence, everybody is in this time in space-time continuum is really dialing in or getting or developing ADHD or ADHD because of this conscious awareness that has been happening. Like,
Right. But here's
you could also think about it. And this is one of the things that Dorian Virtue said. But you can look at it. Think about it this way: that the body that you chose, right? And there's different, say, wiring for different souls that come in. Say that because of the work that you requires an extra amount of energy. Hence, it may come off as hyper when you're not necessarily, you're excited or getting involved with your mission. But the body that you chose was wired to hold an extra amount of energy than those that incarnated, say, many generations before. And so you chose that body in order to, because you needed a high amount of energy to do the work that you wanted to do.
Right, but here's something that I notice when somebody were to talk to somebody with ADHD or any sensitive, and let's see how you describe this. This is like a sensitive disorder where you all of a sudden have a developmental delay. Is that somehow that so-called gene or sensitivity that is within each and every one of us is actually becoming more prevalent? That's what I just don't get.
Oh, I was reading something. Of course, I haven't validated or anything. I'm just going by I can't think of the word for it, but anyway, just the first exposure to it, a primary exposure to it. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. But anyway, what it is there are mutations happening in our DNA. Scientists have actually discovered there's one baby that's been born that has 3 strands. Instead of a double helix, they have a triple helix DNA strand that they're developing.
3 strands.
Right, and
3 strands.
there's people that say that eventually we'll be developing up to 12, and possibly
That is exactly
more.
what we were talking about. Like, here's the thing: the 3-strand DNA is almost like
ascension, evolution.
That is exactly what science is discovering. But here's the funny thing, is that while science is developing in such a way that it's advancing us, at the same time is pulling us back because of the so-called system that we have no idea what is it doing to us nowadays.
Well, it's just like I constantly say, science can be used, what, Michael? as
a tool.
As a tool, right. but it is only current science. It's what the knowledge that we have right now to base the experiments and the methods and the scientific method on at this time. It's relative. Science is relative to the information and knowledge we have at hand to apply it. So
Right, and
it's
science
not,
still means to know.
yeah, it still means to know, but you can know more. And science is just like everything else. It evolves. It evolves into, science evolves into the understanding of the time. And eventually, I believe science will merge with spirituality and get back to its original form of magic.
Which was the way it was before.
Which
Yeah,
is
it's split. Well, science and spirituality
Long
split.
time ago.
At one time, it was magic. It was the mystery schools, and then they
were
split.
both the same.
And then they split into spirituality, and then science, which was just cold hard facts. But now that science is advancing, they're getting to the point where they're understanding that energy. The spirituality has known all this time, and it has to come back together by the law of rhythm. It has to.
It has to.
Yeah, there's absolutely
because there were universal laws before there were.
Yeah, scientific laws.
Scientific laws.
Yeah, and those universal laws are omnipresent. They continue to exist and have always existed, not just on the planet, but out in space, and the formation of nebulas and galaxies. They all follow the same laws.
So this is what's interesting to me. One of the revelations I personally got a couple summers ago. So let's take astronomy. When you look into space, that's a really extreme example of looking into history. That is a physical image of history that we can see. We don't need to read about it. We don't need to be told about it. I mean, we are looking at history right there because it takes time for light to enter the eyes. Well, if we take that idea and let's say I'm looking at these walls, I'm looking at all of you, you're looking at me, no matter how close something is to your eyes, it's still taking time for light to enter your eyes, no matter how minuscule that time is. So you're still always looking into the past, which means, okay, what is the present, what is the future? And my conclusion was the only link to now is consciousness. It's me, it's you, it's people, it's plants, it's the stars. Those are points of now that we can see. And although we observe the past to see that, it's the knowledge of consciousness that is now. Okay, so then what is the future? I believe the future is intimately tied with the expansion of space-time, and it's akin to the molecular. So when we're looking at very small things, that is literally like where the future kind of emerges. That's where space emerges, especially when we consider the expansion of space-time. And within that expansion, we have inspiration, we have thoughts and ideas. Gravity definitely slows down that expansion, but who's to say that planet Earth isn't expanding still? And the reason we don't see it is because the expansion is happening relative everywhere, so we wouldn't see it to begin with. This is going to loop back to another idea: past, present, future. Okay, I guess that was it.
That was well said. Yeah, I'm actually. I considered. I read something somewhere also as far as what you was talking about consciousness. If you look out at night at the stars, whenever you look at any particular star, you're bringing it into your consciousness. So your consciousness is actually reaching out faster than the speed of light toward this light source and bringing it into your conscious awareness. And therefore, you're reaching out your consciousness that far into space-time. Whenever you look at a star, or you look at the moon, or you look at the sun, and that in that way, that is awesome, because consciousness is like instantaneous, where light travels at a well, I say a set speed, but they have the at least Nassim Haramein has pointed out that light's speed is variable. At different times, it's at different speeds. I can't remember if it's increasing or decreasing at the moment, but it's changing. And the reason that it changes, I believe, has to do with the toroidal nature of the universe.
Right,
Because there's a
and like,
constant, yeah. Go ahead, Andy.
so it's almost like as though, like, I don't know if you guys would consider this as the explanation, but somehow, here's what I read about science and toroidal field.
Wait, hold on. We're still in class.
Uh-huh. But
Then
this
all
all
those
really
stuff,
does.
like,
This all
one of
really
those
does
planets.
have to do with
Well,
knowing
if light would have
the
passed,
darker natures.
if we were
Oh, well, that's true. Dark matter, yeah.
Uh-huh.
right, but knowing the shadow side of ourselves, especially like in order to be able to make conscious of whatever's up there, which is the non-duality or God, to be able to make conscious of something that you don't know. And one of them is you being the toroidal field, and that you are the universe. Is that, here's the funny part, is when I look at myself, when I let the light shine to me, I found out that light does not go straight. It bends according to what I set my attention to. And therefore, like, it can enter my head, and I have no idea, but all it takes is you setting that intention in the first place, and then it goes there.
That's true.
Yeah.
I was thinking let's do something like we did yesterday, like Oh Guru, but instead of Oh Guru, let's confess, say, like, let's each go around and confess, say, a darker side of ourselves, or something that we may have done.
We actually have an
was,
authentic relating game that's called the Shadow Game. Like what we played yesterday was an authentic relating game. This one's called Identify Your Shadow. And here's what you do. It's basically what you're saying, where we do this game for 10 minutes each, but I don't know if we actually want to do 10 whole minutes each. But you identify your shadow and you name it. So, like, and you act from, like, a space as if you're that shadow. And so, like, you refer to Bonnie, like, I would be like, I'm bogus binge eater, and my shadow is that when I'm having emotional conflicts and problems, I want to go and binge eat. And it's also a way to protect myself from people by, like, holding an extra layer on my body physically. So it's a protection. And then
were you already
guys,
starting?
No, I'm just trying to give an example. And then
okay.
you guys would ask me questions, not trying to change or give me any kind of solution, but you're just trying to draw out the shadow. You're saying things like, how long have you been with Bonnie? And so I'm referring to myself, like, and I could be like, I've been with Bonnie for, since she was 8 years old. And then you could ask a question like, how does it feel when you're overeating? You stick with questions that are drawing out the shadow and that are, like, making you be present with how you feel in the moment.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right.
But wait, I have a question. So, like, how would you describe the shadow? Like, does it have to be a problem, or does it be your darker side? Is
the darker side.
Hey,
okay, so, like,
Katicha. Hello.
What's up?
I mean, something that you do not want to talk about in front of
You guys don't
everyone
have
else.
to
That's what
play
it
that
is.
game where you just identify your shadow.
You're playing a game to identify your shadow?
Yeah.
That means you pick out the aspect of yourself that you don't want to show to other people, and the goal is to try to draw it out to make it known to everybody by everyone asking like, oh, Shadow, who, like, how long have you been with so-called your real identity right now? That's what it's. That's just like the game Guru from yesterday.
No, it's much different than Guru. But we're asking questions that are like drawing out the shadow, so you could also, but you're not trying to change or coach or fix anything. You're just asking questions.
Just
that,
bring it to light. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, like bringing it to light.
So, okay. So, who wants to go first? This is a Daredevil game, also.
Yeah,
Shit.
oh god, I guess I'll go first.
Identify your name and your shadow.
Okay,
Well, you don't identify your own name, you identify your shadow name. You give your shadow a name, like mine was Bogus Binge Eater.
alright, well, actually, I don't have a name.
I am the Batman.
I have many names. I see myself as the goddess in many forms and many ideas, and very much so the storm is existent within my ability to create.
Hey, we need a timer.
And I express myself as an entity that people can relate to because I don't want to scare them. Questions?
I'll keep the timer.
What's the worst thing about your shadow?
People don't understand me.
You don't
Why don't
have to
people
say about your shadow, you say about you.
Okay.
Oh.
What do you think?
Acting as a shadow right now.
Why don't people understand you?
Because
Goddess.
they have never looked within to the point where they can realize I'm there.
I still don't understand what your shadow is. Or what you are.
I know what he
Is that a
is.
question?
Yeah, can you clarify a little more what it is? What
A
you are?
shadow is my shadow is exactly that. I have been in Wicca before. I've invoked the goddess, and I relate to the idea of the expression of the beauty and perfection within everything as feminine and masculine.
So how is that a shadow? How is that bad?
People don't understand it, so it's something that I have to suppress.
Like when you used to have really long nails and...
Yeah.
So why do you have to suppress it?
I just feel like people wouldn't be as willing to trust what I have to say to them if they saw me for who I was. I do it for them, not for me.
Are you negative?
I can be.
How do you affect Tony?
In such a way that I make him think about how violence is not necessarily an answer, but it's just a tool